If I'm wrong, just let me live in my ignorance. Manon says, my 5-year-old son and I went to the beach for the weekend. I bought him a necklace to wear and one for his scrapbook. He promptly broke the first one. Well, but of course, I just plainly stated that now he knows that a necklace is not a toy and breaks easily. Oh, it rhymes with you know. May know. And the final N is silent. I did good. I can't believe it. May know. That's just like the French would say it. Mais non. Oh, back to the question. I was enjoying the French lesson. Necklace is not a toy and breaks easily, and that maybe we can try and restring it this coming weekend. He asked to wear the other one today to school. And of course, we all know that the other one is going to break too. Before we read on, I said only if he left it on and didn't treat it like a toy. But of course, we know it's going to break. Before we read on, he agreed and said yes. It's just so predictable. And he broke that one too. I mean, after all, he's 5. That's what they're supposed to do. Even with repeated warnings from his teacher about how he was swinging it around. When I picked him up, I asked him what we had agreed to this morning. And he said he forgot. I said that if I had asked Miss Christie to give him ice cream every hour, he would not have forgotten that, and that he had chosen to forget, and now his consequence was to go home and to go to bed right away, which is actually only about 30 minutes early. He was throwing a fit in his bathroom, and when I asked what was happening, he said he was mad because his friend tripped him and knocked the wind out of him today. I said that if he was mad about his consequence, he should know that it was his behavior that led to the consequence and in no way is anyone else's fault. He insisted he was mad for the other reason, so I dropped it. How could I have done it better? Yes, I probably used a semi-controlled, stressful tone when I was trying to put myself into a Greg Bear suit and pretended to be you as I talked to him. Now, forgive me, you did good. I mean, you tried to apply a consequence, but you already know the mistake. I mean, the instant that you feel any irritation as you're applying a consequence to a child, they are like incredibly sensitive radar. So if you're the slightest bit irritated as you're speaking to a child, I mean, man, they pick up the vibes like, and they decompensate. I mean, they just go straight to hell if you're annoyed. So you're doomed. And then you can't apply a consequence. Then they just feel punished. And you notice that I was laughing right from the beginning, right? Well, I wasn't laughing at the child. So calm down. I was laughing at you. And I'm laughing at myself as a parent because I've done the same thing. If you give a 5-year-old a necklace and you say, here, don't break this at school, you just as well break the necklace and hand it to the child because the kid is 5. There's not a chance that this kid isn't going to break this necklace. Why? Because the kid is irresponsible? No, because the kid is 5. Really? I mean, I'm in church this last Sunday, 2 days ago. And in the middle of the meeting, I'm sitting there with my 2-year-old grandchild, and all of a sudden, she screams, and I look over and go, what? and she wants her mother. Well, what happened? There is no explanation. Why did she scream? Because she's 2. Really? That's the reason. Suddenly, some little neuron in her head fired, and she had to have her mother. Well, 2-year-olds don't say, I think I would like to have my mother now, please. They don't. They have to have their mother now. They can't have their mother in 5 seconds. Can they, Mike?
No.
Nope. I mean, her father's sitting, 12 feet away from me. And it's not good enough to have her father, who's a perfectly acceptable human being. No, she had to have her mother now. I'm her grandfather. I was sitting right next to her, and I was not an acceptable substitute. No, I was garbage. It happened because she was 2. Your son broke the necklace because he was 5. Really? And so what would an acceptable consequence have been? To beat up his father. Really? He's too young to hand a necklace and take it to school. No joke. Now, had he been older, then really understood this, then an acceptable consequence would not have been send him to bed. It would have been to say, oh, well then I'll take the necklace and you can't take the necklace to school next time. Not to go to bed. That's not an understandable consequence. Making more sense? Manon is a woman. I didn't get this until just now. Please forgive me. All this time I thought I was talking to a man, so shoot me. Please forgive me. I didn't know this. For some reason I thought Manon was a man's name. So now I know better. All this time I didn't know. So shoot the mother is what I meant to say. But now you get it. See? It's most of the time it's us dumb parents. So lighten up. Very understandable mistake. So you get, I'm not picking at you, right? We just need to not give our children responsibilities they can't handle. And then you just say to the child, when the child breaks it, you go, I'll be darned, I shouldn't have given that to you. My fault. Now, let me go to a question that was given to me last time from a grandmother. This is a grandmother who takes care of the kids when the parents go somewhere. As a rule, she says, I don't allow the kids, she babysits the kids. I kind of hate that term, babysits, but I don't know, it's kind of inescapable, it's kind of acceptable. Kind of infantilizes the kids. But she says, I don't allow the children to call their parents on the phone when I'm watching them, which is really a good idea. I mean, after all, that's why you're taking care of the kids, and it kind of ties the children to the parents when they're gone. They're supposed to be able to leave. And before I read any further, I can already guess the mistake. I mean, once the parents leave, then the kids like to make you believe that they have permission to call the parents. I mean, I can already see this happening. Then the grandmother continues, note that I've never been told directly by my son or his wife that they don't want the kids calling them when they're out at an event. I've made this assumption on my own. Holly said that her father asked her to call him. Now, what are the odds of this, right? The parents go out and then they say, oh, but please, while I'm out, please call me and bother me in the middle of a date. Give me a break. What parent wants to be bothered in the middle of a date? I thought it unlikely that her father said that, but I didn't want to accuse her of fibbing either. I could have and probably should have told her no, but I didn't. So I allowed her to call. but her dad didn't answer. Anyway, so what do I do if I believe she's lying? She has lied before to get her way. Gee, kids aren't any different than adults. So how do you avoid this? You arrange this ahead of time. Before the parents leave, you sit down with the parents and you say, so here's the deal. If you want to talk to the kids while you're gone, you tell me this beforehand. If you're going to have some sort of call arranged, you tell me, oh, by the way, the kids are going to call me. I've arranged for the kids to call me while I'm gone. Otherwise, there ain't going to be no calls. So anything odd that's going to happen, you arrange ahead of time. That way, when the kids say to you, oh, I'm supposed to call Dad, you go, no, you're not. Because if you were supposed to, I would know that. Everything is arranged ahead of time. That's what communicating is for. So now there's no confusion. And if there's anything special, it's known. Otherwise, it's the routine. Then, after Jack, that's the other grandchild, saw Holly use the phone, he decided he should be able to do that too. 5 minutes later, he tells me he's going to call them to say goodnight. I mean, give a kid an inch and, he takes the planet. I wasn't concerned about Jack's happiness or why he wanted to call. I started to get afraid that my son would see all these calls and think there was an emergency and then get angry at me. So you can see the cycle of fear starting here. In an effort to protect myself, I told Jack that we were not calling his dad again. 2 minutes later, I look in his direction and he has the phone and he's calling. I was astonished. I told him to hang up. He refused. I went over and took the phone, not without a struggle, which means there was a struggle, and I hung it up. This is almost always a mistake. Now, Jack is, I didn't get the age here, but if he's making a phone call, this is a child that you can talk to. If you've got a child that you can reason with, then you don't take things by force. Because what it teaches a child is that, him that has the power rules the world. This is not a good lesson in life to be teaching. So you don't go over to the child and just take things. Is it any wonder that children do things by hitting? We teach them that. So you're leaping onto the field of death. Now, so what do? You go over to the child and you say, give me the phone. And the child says, no. And you stand there and you say, kindly, give me the phone. And you just stand there and you say, give me the phone now. Now, you're a grandparent, and there's a limit to the consequences that you can apply. Now, as a parent, this really gets easy. So you can say, you can give me the phone now without consequences, or you can give me the phone with consequences. And the consequences you can apply as a parent get hysterical. I mean, there are so many consequences you can apply as a parent that it's like right out of Looney Tunes. So with a child, as a parent, it's like, it's a hoot. So you can just say to like an 8-year-old, you can say, with or without consequences, how do you want to do this? And after you've done this a couple of times, children will hang up the phone immediately. So what you just do is you say, with or without, what do you want to do? And when the child says, they look at you real quizzically like, I don't know, what are you going to do? You just calmly, like, for example, walk into the garage and come back with a socket wrench. And then you say, with or without. And they keep talking on the phone, and then you just go into their bedroom, for example, and begin to disassemble their bed. And you take their bed apart, and you take it into their garage, and so for the next 2 months, they don't have a bed, and they sleep on the floor. And then they learn that when you say with or without consequences, you're not joking. The principle is that with consequences is really inconvenient to them. And they learn you're not joking when you say, now. Now, as a grandparent, that's harder because it may turn out that the parents don't agree with your consequences, and then it's a real bother. But you can, in a really humorous way, right on the spot, make consequences pretty annoying to a child. You can say, you can hang up the phone now without consequences, or we can do it the hard way. And the child will look at you like, what? And all you have to do as the child is talking is put your hand between the child's mouth and the receiver. Right while they're speaking with the child there, just put your finger in the child's mouth while the child is talking, and you'll discover, for example, it's very difficult for the child to keep talking. And if you do this when you're not irritated and you're smiling at the child and you're joking with the kid and the child knows that you love him or her, the child will not be irritated. If you've never seen this done, you won't even know what I'm talking about. The difference between that and force is huge. Huge. Now, let me read on a little bit further. At which point, he went into a major screaming temper tantrum. Why? Because you were forcing the kid. Because by forcing the kid to do a thing, you were saying, I'm going to make you do it my way. I don't love you. I didn't yell or spank him, but you were forcing him, which is what I would have done prior to real love. But I didn't love him either. It just gets worse. I told him it was okay to scream, but that he needed to do it in his room. He refused to budge, so I attempted to carry him. Again, forcing him, but he was dead weight. It wasn't pretty. Love and teach is what the kid needed. So, what you do is, when the kid is screaming, instead of carrying him to his room, you get down on the floor next to him and you say, I know you're trying to tell me something, but I can't understand it in that language. So I'll go and I'll come back in a couple of minutes and see if I can understand you better then. So you go away for a couple of minutes and you come back and say, no, I can't understand you yet, but I'll come back in a couple of minutes. No irritation. No child keeps screaming for long. If you're not irritated, the child will quit. And then you say, what are you trying to tell me? Children are dying to speak to somebody who's listening. They are. And if you're really listening in a loving way, the child will speak to you. No kidding. They will. Then it says the kid ran up the stairs screaming, I hate you. I'll bet. It's because you weren't loving him. And slammed his door. I'm sure he did hate me, it says. He heard me saying, I don't love you. You're right. You've got the picture. And once he went upstairs, he banged around and threw things. And I actually watched him purposefully hit his head on the wall. Now, what do you do at that point? Well, many people say, well, don't hit your head on the wall. Oh, no, don't say that. What you do at that point is say, well, wow, that looks like that really hurts. Does that hurt? Looks like it hurts. You might even, for example, hit your own head on the wall lightly and go, yeah, it really does hurt. Seems like it would hurt less if you didn't do that, but I could be wrong. Watch it for a little bit and then step out into the hall for 10 seconds, then come back and go, still hitting your head on the wall, huh? Well, I'll come back in a little bit and see how you're doing. He won't keep hitting his head on the wall. And you tell him, I hate to see you hurt him. Show a genuine concern for him. He wants to be loved by you. That's what kids want. Don't try to control him. Don't try to force him. And if you show a genuine concern for this kid, he'll listen to you. Now, a subject from 2 weeks ago, because somebody asked about this. I was talking about putting a kid in a child seat, car seat, back seat. I was talking about not forcing a kid, like as in taking a cell phone from a kid. But I was talking about putting an 18-month-old child into a car seat. And I was saying, we were talking about a child who was wildly out of control and hitting people and hurting herself and the people who were trying to put her into the car seat. And I was saying that one way to do that was to reach out with a hand and push the child into the car seat firmly for a second, 2 seconds, maybe, tops, to the point that the child became slightly uncomfortable, where it was even a little difficult to breathe for a second or two, most. That's all it takes. I mean, because I've done this. The child is not being injured. During the entire time you're doing this, you are looking the child right in the face, smiling at the child, speaking to the child and calling the child by name. In the times I've done it, singing to the child or telling the child a story, whatever it is, and the child knows you love the child. And the child, all you're doing is telling the child, no, you can't do that. You can't thrash, kick, and throw yourself around while we're being fastened into the car seat. And all this does is tell the child, no. Just like when, surely everybody here has tried to, like, for example, tie a child's shoe. And they try to kick. Every kid's done that. And you hold the child's foot. And the child quits kicking for an instant. Because the child realizes, oh, I can't kick while my shoe is being tied. And then they hold still for a second, and then you go to tie the shoe. Or when, for example, I've worked in emergency rooms for, years. And when you're working in an emergency room and you're trying to, for example, suture a child's wound, it wouldn't be doing the child a favor to allow the child to kick and thrash around while you're suturing the wound. That wouldn't be a kindness to allow that to happen. So I've learned, after suturing now hundreds of children, there are a couple of ways to do this. You can hold the child firmly and say, you can't move. Or you can let the child kick and thrash and injure himself. Some physicians would then strap the child down to a board, which is pretty mean, actually, which frightens the child even more. Or you can speak sternly and hold the child really briefly, like I just did with the kid in the child seat, and the child will hold still while you sew the child up. I've been thanked by 100 parents or more for doing what I just described with the child in the car seat, doing it exactly like that, and sewing the child up without strapping them onto a board. And the children do great. This lasts for 1 second. Then, after you do this with the child, here's the remarkable thing. Then after the child is let out of the car seat, that child will cling to you like a vine. Why? Because the child knows you love her or him. The child knows that's a loving act. Whereas after the child has fought with a parent, kicking and screaming and all of the weak stuff that parents do who put up with all the thrashing, the child does not feel loved. The child feels enabled. The child feels the weakness of a parent who does that, whereas the child feels the loving strength from a parent who does this and says, you can't do that. That takes loving guts. Love is strong. Whereas that whole allowing a child to kick and thrash around is weak. And it ends up with children feeling spoiled and lost and confused. They don't know what to do in a world like that. And they don't feel loved. Children feel more loved when you tell them, you can't do that. It's not a guess. I've seen it over and over again. Not just in a situation like that, but as a teacher, as a counselor, people want to be told no when something is wrong. And it takes real guts to do that. And most of us, as parents, as teachers, as advisors, we don't have the courage to do it. We're afraid. We're so afraid of offending people that we can't help them. And I feel bad for us. And that's how we end up being so spoiling, so enabling, so, well, hurtful. I got on a rant. My two daughters, 4 and 5 years old, constantly fight whenever they're seated next to each other in the back seat of my car. The law requires them to be in car seats, placed in the back seat. I don't have a third rear seat. How do I get them to school without having them kicking and fighting each other? My coach suggested I place a cardboard carrier between them as a consequence, but they've learned to reach around it with their hands and feet. Short of matching straitjackets, what do you suggest I do, which lovingly keeps them from hitting each other? Oh, no, you don't put putting a cardboard thing between them is another way of forcefully keeping them from getting at each other. You see? No, you need to give them a consequence for their behavior. So, you need to make it inconvenient. So, for example, one thing to do would be you stop the car and do something they don't like. Picture something that they don't like. They could stop and you could require them to, I don't know, stop and exercise, I'm making stuff up. Think of something that they really hate doing. Now, the first thing that came to my mind, you're going to really think is just terrible, but the first thing that came to my mind is something that I used to do at the dinner table, and the kids just really hated it a whole lot, but get a squirt gun. And so there you are, you're driving along, and one of the kids starts making a whole lot of noise. Remember, the entire purpose of a consequence is what? Is to make things inconvenient for the child so that they won't do that particular behavior again, right? So you get just a plain old $2 plastic squirt gun. And so you're driving along, and these two start fighting. And so what you do is you pull the car over, you reach around, and you turn around, and whichever kid is making noise, and you just squirt them right in the face. You think I'm joking? They won't like it, will they? And they won't keep it up. You think I'm teasing? I'm not. They're going to get the point, too. Oh, somebody said, how is that different from hitting? Because it doesn't hurt them one bit. And you're going to laugh the whole time that you're doing it. Anybody get the difference between them? There's no hurting. It's really easy to wipe off water. Nobody's injured, and they're going to look at you absolutely stunned. Now, if you want to come up with another consequence, you can. But you pull over the car and you absolutely stop it. You speak to them, you take them out of their seats. But you see, if you pull over the car and you stop and you take them out of their seats, you're going to be late. So you come up with one. Now, Donna was thinking you could zip tie them. The problem with zip ties is that the law will penalize you. I can't think of any court in the land, if you use zip ties, where you're going to come off with that. But if you use a squirt gun while the two kids are in the back fighting each other, I can't think of a law in the land that's going to penalize you. I did this, by the way, in a restaurant. Let me think. How many years ago? Mike was there. But my kids were teenagers, and one of them was saying something unkind to another one. We won't go into this. Nobody's going to buy this. Somebody said, let's go to one that was sent in. Something happened last night that disturbed me, and in the moment I felt confused about how to respond, so I did nothing. At Cub Scouts, my ex-husband was there, and my son was running around like a banshee when it was time for the flag to process. He needed to go sit with the other boys. My ex-husband grabbed him by the upper arm and squeezed him, pulling his arm upward at the same time, telling him to go sit down. When he let go, my son started rubbing his arm and pouting. And when he started to say, "You hurt me," my ex-husband cut him off, saying something to the effect of, "Don't even try to pull that one on me." So he'd been hurt by my ex-husband. My son gave up and walked away. My ex-husband and I have never seen eye to eye on physical discipline. I personally think it's useless and doesn't teach anybody anything except fear and how to exert power by being a bully. It screams, "I don't love you." So what should I do when I'm witnessing this kind of discipline in the moment? What can I say to my ex-husband, if anything, that has the best potential for promoting teaching rather than physical discipline? I don't want to attack, and I want to let him know that in my experience, doing that doesn't work. It's not effective. If you think you can teach your ex-husband anything about how to raise your child, you're in a dream. So what can you do? Nothing. If your ex-husband leaves bruises on your son, and you're really concerned about your son's well-being, you can always take him to the emergency room and have your bruises photographed, I suppose. But the minute you get into that kind of adversarial role, you're pretty much into it. You got to be willing to take that to court. So how much into that kind of fight do you want to get? You're going to have to really be willing to get into a fight if you're going to do that. But as far as teaching your husband how to parent your child, you're done with that. When your son is with your ex-husband, he's on another planet. He's out of your control. And when your son's with you, you do the best you can to love him. But he's out of your control. So how do you address it? You don't. At all. I'm still laughing to myself about this squirt gun. I understand the real love principles, the law of choice, etc., yet I'm still struggling with an issue with my husband. We both agreed that we wish to have our 11-year-old son in bed around 9 p.m., yet my husband keeps getting sucked into watching unplanned movies that he comes across on TV, and he ends up letting our son stay up until 10 or 11, depending on the movie. We have a family routine of sharing gratefuls, etc., and this really interferes with our family routine. Sharing gratefuls. What is sharing a grateful?
I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for that.
Okay. I need some suggestions about how not to be irritated or deal with this situation. Okay. Well, so this really is, it sounds like an issue between your husband and yourself. So this is something you need to talk to your husband about and say, Fred, I really enjoy the time that I spend with you. Don't make this about your son. I really value the time that I spend with you. So don't bring up the mistakes that he's made. People really hate being told that they're wrong, like a lot. And say, so I really value the time that I get to spend with you after 9 o'clock. So I've noticed that we have a hard time, don't make it about him, getting rid of Freddie, Billy, the kid, your son, after 9 o'clock so that you and I can be alone. So what I need to ask you is this. You need to make it about the solution, not the problem. See, what most people say is, you really screw up. You let Billy stay up after 9 o'clock. People hate hearing that. So go for the solution. So if I see Billy up after 9 o'clock, you need to provide him with options, your husband. You need to say, what would be the best way for me to bring this up with you? And you need to give him options A, B, and C. So you need to say, would the best way for me to say this to you, would it be this? Should I come to you and say, Fred, it's time for Billy to go to bed now? Or would you like to stay out of it? See, he may not have the guts to send little Billy Bob to bed. That may be the problem. It may be that Fred just really needs little Billy Bob's approval, which is the case with most parents. Most parents just are gutless. They want their kids to like them. So you may be just cast in the role of being the bad parent, and he may not mind. So you may say, okay, so how about option B? How about if I be the bad cop and I come in and say, all right, Billy Bob, it's time to go to bed. You can't make a kid go to sleep, but you can make a kid go to his room. So, Fred, if you want to, I'll be the bad cop, and I will say it's time to go to bed. And that process cannot start at 9 o'clock. If the kid's bedtime is 9 and you start at 9, you're doomed. So what if we start the process at 20 till, or whatever it is? And you need to have this conversation with your husband at, like 6 p.m., sometime completely dissociated from bedtime. And it's all about the two of you loving each other. It's all about because you love to spend time with Fred. And you give him tons of options. You see how different this is from coming at Fred and telling him what a screw-up he is? Is this making sense? It makes things just way different. Let me know if that helps. Now let's do one that was sent to me. Here's a great one from a kid. This is from a child that says, and I'm not sure the child's age, but it's less than 16, because the child says, I'm having a little issue, and since I'm barely starting to understand being a teenager, so I guess a little older than 13, but less than 16, I need to know how to deal with my dad. Here's what's happening. He gave me the talk about boys, which couldn't be very flattering since, as a whole, we're not very commendable, and how they can affect me and the problems that come with dating them before I'm 16, so she's not 16. I understand that part of it. Then the very next day, he confronts me and he limits everything that I do. He started becoming very paranoid about everything that I did. We'll call her Susie. I'm currently emailing a guy named, we'll call him Billy Bob. And every time I get on the computer to do homework, my dad is always telling me that I can't talk to him. He's very controlling over me right now, and I have no idea how to deal with this. I really need your help. I wish I could just let my dad know that what he's doing is, well, annoying. I just want to be as respectful as possible, but he's not being respectful or loving when he rejects my wishes as a person. I know he's just trying to protect me, but I really wish that he would let me choose for myself. I wish that he could give me some guidelines and then leave me to decide what I want to do for my life. Sorry for this being a little long. Oh, no, you're short, sweetie. But I'm in a huge problem. I need to know as soon as possible how to deal with this. Thanks. Now, for those of you who are parents, pay attention to this. Notice, this is a new teenager. I'm guessing she's probably 13 or 14. Notice she says she wants to be respectful to her father, but her father is all over her trying to control her. Now, she initially wants to be respectful, but if her father keeps controlling her, guess what this is going to turn into? She's looking for help. So we parents have to pay attention to this. So my advice to you, Susie, is first understand him. He's afraid for you. And he has reason to be afraid for you. Because there isn't a teenage boy, and you got to listen to me here, sweetie. Pay attention. Because, so you're 13 or 14. There isn't a 14-year-old guy on the planet who is unconditionally concerned for your welfare. They just aren't mature enough to do that. They're looking for something for themselves. They are. They don't mean to do this. I mean, part of them is concerned for you, but 14 and 15-year-old boys are pretty much hormone poisoned, and at least partly are looking out for something for themselves. There is danger there. Your father was a 14 and 15-year-old boy, so he has reason to be concerned. It's not an unrealistic danger that he's thinking about. So he's trying to protect you. He's not crazy. He's not. 4 out of 10 teenage girls will become pregnant. It's not nuts. 8 out of 10 of those pregnancies are unplanned. 1/4 of high school girls will get a sexually transmitted disease. This isn't nuts. He's worried for a reason. So he's trying to protect his little girl. He has a realistic concern. So, cut the guy some slack. But you're right that he's not being sensitive to you. He's not. He's not being loving. He's not doing it in a loving way. So you're right about that. And he's wrong in not being loving. So I get that. He's all stuck in getting and protecting behaviors. He's playing on the field of death. So he's wrong. But you can't change him. So if you think there's something you can say to him to change his behavior, you are insane. But you can determine your behavior. You can decide that you can be loving and sensitive and not play on the field of death. So pay attention. Here's your dad who's all concerned and fearful and playing on the field of death. And this ain't fair, by the way. In a parent-child relationship, he's the one who should be on the field of life and be loving. I know, I get it. But he's not. He's on the field of death if you do anything where you are angry and you react to him on the field of death, you're going to lose. So don't do it. Don't climb on the field of death with him. Pay attention to what he needs here. And if you do what I'm suggesting to you here, you are going to win. So listen carefully. You need to listen to his fears. And if you do that, it's going to make a big difference. So what would that look like? Sit down with him, get out a piece of paper, and say stuff to him like this. So, Dad, what would help you here? What would help you feel listened to? What do you need? His face is going to fall off when you say this. Because, see, what happens is this. Fathers come at their daughters and they go, you need to do this and this and this. And what the daughters do is they immediately fight back. Well, now what have you got? You got a war. Everybody dies. Don't do it. He's going to come at you and say, nah. You're going to say, Dad, what do you need? Get out a piece of paper, and I mean it, write on it this. What do you need in the way of school? You need my grades to be what? And then you say, so Dad, I'm going to report to you on a regular basis. How often do you need to know how I'm doing in school? And you're going to tell him how you're doing in school. He needs to know stuff. He's an interfering father. You're going to tell him how you're doing in school. How do you need me to be doing at home as far as chores and all that stuff? And then you tell him, Dad, I'm X years old. I'm not old enough to date, but there's this boy, Billy Bob, who wants to email me. He's not trying to date me. Dad, is it acceptable if Billy Bob emails me? You ask his permission. And then, this is going to kill you, but if you don't do this, you're dead, kid. You say, he wants to email me, and my emails are all going to be sent to this account. But here's my email account. There's a permanent record there. Here are the accounts. At any time that you want to come and sit down with me in my presence, at any point you can sample any of my emails. And I'll sit with you and you can read my emails with me, sitting there. So what I'm telling you is, my life is an open book. And under those conditions, is it okay if Billy Bob and I email back and forth? I don't really want you to read all my emails, but it's kind of like polls. You can sample them. So like, if every couple of weeks you want to come in and go, okay, I want to sample the emails from today. At least you know I'm open and honest. You could read today's emails and come sit and read them with me so you know nothing's going on. If I wasn't being honest, I wouldn't be willing to let you read them. Do you get the point? If you are showing that kind of honesty, the old man is going to relax. Do you see? Whereas the instant you go to defend yourself, he's going to think you're hiding and lying, and he's going to be on you like a blanket, smothering you. See this? You try it. It's going to make a huge difference. The more open you are with him, the less he's going to try to choke the life out of you. Whereas the more you resist him, oh, baby, he's going to chain you to a post like a slave. So you be open and honest and tell him that you'll support him as your father. He'll let you go. I told my kids when they lived here at home, keep the rules, do your chores, do what you're supposed to do, and I'll cut you loose, which of course sometimes they abused, but still, that's the point. The more open and honest you are, the less you're followed. Where are we? But they didn't abuse it often. Let's see. Oh, here's Mike. He says, we let our 18-month-old scream. Oh, okay. Let's see. My 15-year-old takes showers long enough to completely run our hot water heater out of hot water, which inconveniences the rest of the family. Do I set a time limit and then turn off the hot water as a consequence? He also plugs up the toilet and allows it to overflow, expecting others to clean up after him. How do I teach him to be more considerate of the family? Oh, that's really easy. What you do is you tell the child the next time that you run the hot water so that it runs the hot water out, then for a week afterward, you will shower outside in the hose where there is no hot water. That way you know he can't use hot water. You'll shower outside. For 2 years, I lived in the South Pacific where there was no hot water. I showered outside there was a spigot that came up out of the ground, and I showered outside in a pipe. It won't kill him. He can shower outside in a hose. And if he thinks you're kidding, you just say, do I look like I'm laughing? When somebody abuses a thing, that's what you do. They can't use it. If somebody abuses a car, they can't use a car. If he abuses hot water, you tell him for the next week, you can't use any hot water. So he will bathe outside in the cold water. If he plugs up a toilet and doesn't fix it himself, then what you do is you take him down to Walmart and you go to the hunting section, and they have these little, hunters use them all the time, these little porta potties, little plastic things. They're gross, little nasty things, but hunters use them. And they're used for outdoor stuff, hunters. And for the next week, he uses a porta potty that he uses out in the garage or whatever, but he can't use the toilet for a week. Easy. What we abuse, we can't use. Really simple. And you'll discover that he will learn to take care of what he had previously abused. Poof. But you don't yell. There's no lecturing. There's nothing. They just can't use it. Mike's making a great point here. Somebody was talking about the power of a child screaming. Screaming has power for a child only because we let it have power. I've watched children absolutely rule their families with screaming. A child screams, the entire family jumps and runs because the child screams. No, in our family, if a child screamed, all we were concerned about was, is the child hanging by its neck between two slats in a bed? Is arterial blood squirting? It had to be arterial. Venous didn't warrant jumping up. Was something wrong? Otherwise, we go, I'll be darned. Mike's daughter, who's 2, they don't react. In fact, sometimes if their daughter screams, they scream back, like laughing, like they exchange screams and then they move on. She's learned that you don't get anything from screaming. Big deal. And see, some people hear these solutions and they think it's harsh. It's loving. If a child thinks that he can stuff up a toilet and do nothing, and there's no consequences, he thinks that then he can also abuse cars. He can abuse laws. He can then later in life abuse drugs. He can abuse his wife. Do you get the point? That he's the center of the universe, that there are no consequences to life. These are very dangerous lessons. Not exaggerating a bit. Barb, my 10-year-old daughter, Kim, gave her friend a stuffed dolphin that Kim received as a gift. Gave her friend a stuffed dolphin that Kim had received as a gift from her father. When my husband found out, he was angry. I asked him, my husband, to let Kim handle this herself. And even though it was a gift, she could do with it what she wants. My husband demanded Kim call her friend and demand the dolphin be given back. My husband rushed over to the child's house and took the dolphin back. He wouldn't listen to reason and was mad we didn't tell him about this sooner. How do we tell him things when he flies into action and doesn't let Kim handle her own situations? Moving forward, how do I share confidential things Kim tells me if I have to be concerned about her dad interfering? Also, the child who he took the toy back from was crying because it was a gift from Kim. The word gift. If something is truly a gift, then it has no strings attached to it. So, if I give you a gift, then you get to do whatever you want to with it. It is none of my business what you do with it. You can use it, take it back to the store, set fire to it, kill it, bury it, re-gift it. I really don't care. Really, I don't. This Christmas, we gave my father one of those, I don't know if you've ever seen it, it's a new thing. It's a picture frame, electronic, and you load pictures into it. I think they're cool as can be. And you can load 1,000 pictures into this frame. And so that instead of one picture, it alternates pictures. It rotates pictures on this little electronic frame so that you can see 1,000 pictures in one frame. I sat there looking at this thing. Of course, I have a simple mind. And I looked at this and just went, my dad's going to love this. Well, it turns out that my dad didn't love this. He looked at that thing and he said, I have to change pictures in this dang thing? This is too complicated. I'm too old for this. And so even though in my simple mind, I'm going, well, why doesn't he, isn't 1,000 pictures better than one? He has picture frames all over his house that have one picture in it, right? And I thought, why doesn't he just let it rotate 1,000 times? That made sense to me. No, it irritates him that now he can't add more pictures to it or change the pictures. That makes no sense to me. It doesn't have to. It bothers him. It's his gift. So it bothers him, and he called me apologizing all over the place that it bothers him, and he wants to take it back. And I said, I don't care. It's your gift. He wanted to apologize again. Dad, it's your gift. Do whatever you want. Well, then he tried to take it back to the store, and he couldn't. He said, I don't know what to do. I said, send it to me. I'll take care of taking it back to the store. Well, I feel bad about it. Send it to me. I'll take care of the whole thing. If it bothers him, what do I care? It's my gift to him. It has no strings attached to it. So the bottom line is, your husband is wrong, period. But it's not your business to tell him he's wrong, because you also have to unconditionally love him. So yes, he's wrong, and he gets to be wrong. So what do? You let him go over there and grab the dang gift and be wrong, and you explain to your daughter, your dad gets to do this. And a gift is unconditional, and we're going to unconditionally love your dad. So explain to your friend that this is what your dad is doing, and it's not the right thing to do, but we're going to unconditionally support and love your dad. You don't sugarcoat it. You explain it. You can't explain it another way. It's wrong. And we're going to love your dad while he learns this principle. Is this making sense? There's no other way to see it. You can't say something's orange when it's green. But we love him. In fact, that's what makes it unconditional love, is loving somebody while they're doing a wrong thing. So how do you look ahead to the next time? You don't. You deal with stuff as it comes up. So, gee, too bad. So you love him, and don't try to teach him about this one. He's going to blow up at unpredictable times. He's going to be an idiot at unpredictable times. So am I. There you go. But explain it to your daughter. She's old enough to get it. She's 10 years old. She can get it. She understands what a gift is. And you say, sorry, sweetie, this is the way life goes. Enjoy the dolphin. So your questions have been brilliant. We still have a few more that we need to get to next time. And so I'll see you guys next Tuesday. Go ahead and, again, email me the questions you have. They've been brilliant. And we'll get to those and our live ones. And in the meantime, it's always about real love. It's been a hoot. See you in a week.